Lace 'em up, let's start the show. We're digging in with Trip. 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 We're digging in with Trip today, yeah.
Well, for the very first time in the history of the National Hockey League Dig In Player of the Month, it's not going to go to a player. For the month of March, representing 51 years of supreme excellence, he was just honored this past Friday as we tape this in Buffalo. The iconic, legendary Hall of Fame voice of the Buffalo Sabres, Jeanneret, the voice, will be our Player of the Month. He is Elvis when he's in the building or on the streets of Buffalo for all of the right reasons. His passion, the unique nature of his call, the great organization that Buffalo long has been, and all of his iconic moments through the years. 51 years, RJ. And he has been an extraordinary friend to me since I started in 1998 broadcasting. He's a legend even among legends. He is our March Dig In Player of the Month. And we're gonna dig in with RJ in just a second, thanks to the great people at Voodoo Ranger. Check out their Juice Force, really a Top Gun spin-off new IPA. It's spectacular, it's bold. Maverick and Goose would certainly approve. Voodoo Ranger, they dig in. Juice Force, a little bit of a fruit tinge to their bold, smooth, potent IPA. A reminder to check out and rate and review our podcast on all audio platforms as well as YouTube. And I sort of got tongue-tied, RJ never did, to check out our digintrip.com merchandise line. Without further ado, let's see how the voice is doing, fresh off of the night that his banner went to the rafters to join all the other Buffalo Sabres greats and will always be there along the Niagara. Jeanneret, aka RJ. RJ, you legend among legends. It's great to see you. Boy, these mock turtlenecks, I should have started wearing them years ago in tribute to you. These are quite warm. It's a warm spring day here in Raleigh. These things warm you right up.
Well, it's actually not bad here either. It's in the mid-60s. And for Buffalo, that's pretty good at this time of year.
RJ, based on what you've meant to me and infinite hockey fans, but to me specifically as a friend, as a mentor, for so many years, I had such high expectations for your night last Friday night. RJ went to the roof of the building to join other Sabres greats. The night was so special and amazing, it even surpassed my stratospheric expectations. Reflecting on it now several days later, your thoughts, having been the centerpiece of just an unforgettable evening.
I was pretty cocky until they told me, okay, you go next. You're coming last, and you go out next. And I went out next, and I heard those fans, and I wasn't cocky anymore. It was overwhelming, and it was highly emotional. And I can tell you, and I'm proud of it actually, that I had an awful time trying to keep it together. I did. I got through it without breaking down, but man, 51 years, and a lot of those folks had been there for most of those years anyway, and certainly not all of them, but most of them anyway. And they were dedicated Sabres fans, and I was hearing it like it was like a robin chirping in spring.
Oh, Robin, the bird of my home state of Michigan. I've been playing A Beautiful Noise, Neil Diamond, for the last week. You referenced the song. In terms of the most beautiful noise part of the night, whether it be your speech, the unbelievable ovation, the players bringing you out on the ice after they won the hockey game, getting the sword in the locker room, what was, among all the beautiful noises, the most beautiful noise last Friday?
And that was just part and parcel of everything. I mean, everything when I got to bed that night, and I stayed in downtown Buffalo at the hotel attaching the Sabres rink, I started to reflect upon it. I looked at my phone. It was 11:22, and I never saw 11:23. I was absolutely exhausted, and I just went down, and that was it. But there was nothing I would want to put my finger on that was better than another part of the evening, because it all worked together so well. Oh, so well.
Different set of circumstances. Many times when I've called you and you've always answered in the nocturnal hours, have I fallen asleep with my phone in my hand? The answer is yes. RJ, way before the times of cell phones, at what age did you first say to yourself, I'd like to be an announcer? And who were the guys that maybe you looked up to the most?
To be honest, I went to a cram course in Chicago when I was about 19, I guess. It was one of those 13-week things. You too can be an announcer, blah, 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 whatever. And so I went down and took that course, and came back and found myself a job in a little town called Lindsay, Ontario. And I went from there to Cobourg, and from there to Kenora, and then to Niagara Falls. When I got to Niagara Falls, it was the 4th station in 9 months. And I never left after that, except to go to Buffalo, of course. But I mean, I still live in Niagara Falls, and it's just the commute is all it is. But I didn't pattern myself after anybody. I enjoyed listening to various announcers, but I was a disc jockey. I had nothing to do with doing hockey games. Absolutely nothing whatsoever, until one day I was sitting at the arena to watch a hockey game, a junior game, the Niagara Falls Flyers, of course, way back in the day. And a fella came down from the booth and said, do you know anything about play-by-play? I said, why? He said, well, our play-by-play guy just got sick. I said, well, then I guess we're going to find out, aren't we? Whether I know anything or not. And I went up and did the game, and I have no idea what I sounded like. I was probably brutal. I don't know. I have no idea. All I know is I'm still doing them.
Ted Darling, you had all of your great color analysts, your partners in the building. God rest Ted Darling's soul. As a fellow voice, what did you admire the most in his call and his friendship?
Well, the friendship, I think, is the most important part of that. We had a wonderful relationship. And I actually, when I started, I would work color with him when he did play-by-play. So it wasn't that I broke into play-by-play right away. I did, when he did TV, then I would switch over and I would do the play-by-play after that. But we were friends in the summer too. We used to take our kids up north and go fishing for those weekends, or 3 or 4 days or whatever it was that we would go. And we had a whole bunch of guys that did it. I also worked with Pat Hannigan. He was along on those trips. And Ron Schock, who used to play in Pittsburgh and in Buffalo and in St. Louis. He played all around and is now living in Rochester, and his kids. And we had just had a great relationship, both on and off the ice, as you might say. And I missed him very, very much when he was claimed way too early. I mean, way too early.
An ovation on RJ night that rivaled yours was for your wife, Cupcake. And I mean, the place went bonkers. I saw you briefly yesterday when we were in Buffalo. When did the great nickname Cupcake come together? I
have no idea. I honestly don't. She might remember, but I don't remember where it came from. I do remember that I had a friend way back in the day who subsequently had passed away. And he called his wife, I think he called her Cupcake too, but I'm not too sure. That could have been where it came from right there. But other than that, I don't know, just popped up and I said it once and then it stuck.
But just like all of your iconic lines, because I know none of them have ever been scripted. I want to run through because, when I first got the job, Jimmy Lorentz was your partner. I want to run through your great partners, and I'm sure you'll speak more importantly about friendship. What comes to mind when we think about he was there, Jimmy Lorentz?
Yeah, he was there, and he was also there the next day when the alumni, 30 of the alumni, going way back, held a luncheon, and myself and Rip Simonik, the longtime equipment manager with the Sabres, were both, I guess we were honored, but everybody was equal within the room. There were no cameras allowed. There was nothing in there. So it was great. And Jimmy Lorenz sat right next to me. He was on one side, and Rob Ray, the color analyst of today, was on my other side. So it was a great day. Lorenzo was the type of guy who, he surprised me. He came along and decided that he wanted to do some color work, and he did it with Ted Darling before me on TV. And when he slid over to getting next to me after Ted was gone, then he just fit in. It was like a hand going into a glove. It worked very, very well. We worked good together, very good.
You know, it's you told the story recently, and I'd love to hear you expound upon it, because of course I've always announced for Carolina, and the only time I'd ever root against the RJ Sabres is if Carolina's playing Buffalo in the conference final, and you lost all your defensemen. You and Lorenzo were at the bar before Game 7. And another addition to the list, tell us about when head coach Lindy Ruff joined you guys for a much needed cocktail at the bar.
Well, he came, we were sitting there and having a beer, and Lindy came in and he was laughing. And I really didn't see a whole lot to laugh about. He was down to no defenseman. He was bereft of D, let's put it that way. And I said, "What are you laughing at?" And he said, "I don't know what else to do. I just lost McKee." Jay McKee was gone, and there was nothing he could do about it. He had to carry on and play just that way. It kind of reminded me a little bit about, I went out west earlier this year, even though I don't travel anymore. I did go out west because I had told the team that I would attend their, what they called a road crew party. And I said, okay, and I got on the charter, and I had to, as a matter of fact, what I had to do was test for 6 straight days in order to get into the bubble, as we all know now what bubbles are. And I did, and we took off and left and went to Phoenix first. And then the plan was to go to Denver and then on to Vegas, where the party would be. And we landed in Phoenix with everybody negative, and getting off the plane, 11 tested positive. Now, something is fishy. We know something's going on here. That's not quite right. In 3 hours, that's all it took for everybody to catch COVID when you're 30,000 feet in the air. None of it made any sense. And so they continued to do testing. And before the weekend was out, 10 were okay. They were back in again, which left me. I was the only one who was still positive. And it took until Monday morning at 5:30 when I finally got a phone call. And after maybe 12 different tests, I don't know how many, I didn't count them, but they're at my door night and day testing me. And they finally said, okay, you're good to go. So I carried on after that. I said, I don't need to go to Denver anyway. I got to get to Vegas. So I went to Vegas and had a wonderful time at the road crew party. It was incredibly packed, all kinds of Buffalo Sabres fans from everywhere. And it was a nice evening.
You know, I saw your partner Rob Ray last night before the game, and of course I remember him vividly as a Sabre. And I said, what was it, when you were working with, Harry Neal and of course the legend RJ, and he said, I was a nervous wreck. And, and he said, I just didn't want Rick to ever give me the old Heisman. And he said that he would show up to the bus after the game. This is him last night. And he's a big man, as we both know. And he said he would carry as many beers as humanly possible to get into your good graces. And fast forward all these years later, you and the Razor are the closest of friends. Can you maybe speak about the high points of that journey and the special nature?
I remember part of it, and I can tell you in Pittsburgh one day we did the game, and I usually was the first one down at the end of the game because I didn't do a post game. I didn't do anything like that. I don't know where he went. He might have gone to the dressing room or something, but I left and went down and went outside and got on the bus. And as usually happened with me, by the time this game was over, I had to find a washroom. So I went to the back of the bus to use the washroom, and I got locked inside. I couldn't get out. Now I'm pounding on the door, trying to. There was nobody on the bus when I got on, but I don't know when anybody has got on. Right after that, and I called a couple of people. They didn't take my calls. I had no idea what was going on. And then I said, finally, somebody came back and heard me in there, so they let me out. And I went up and I said, "Thanks, Razor. That's very nice of you. It's too bad you couldn't have, just looked after your partner a little bit better. And I know you didn't want me to get any more than my share of the beer, but I'm never going to get to the beer if I'm stuck in that bloody washroom."
I'm sure Harry had a good one-liner. Through the years, RJ, my whole career changed because in the lockout of 04-05, my longtime general manager, who you know well, Jim Rutherford,
Right.
he said to me, Trip, I really think you should meet Harry Neal for a cup of coffee. And I was so nervous meeting him, and Harry took me under his wing, and I personally think he's the finest analyst of all time. Your thoughts about a fellow legend, Harry Neal?
Well, Harry, nowadays you hear the same joke an awful lot, but when he was first, and I was working with him, and I knew him prior to that, of course, I had known him for a few years, and he had some of the greatest lines of all time. I keep thinking of two big players that got pounding away at each other in the corner of the rink, and he said, "The last time two big things like that got together, Secretariat was born." He had one great line after another that I had never heard, but he kept coming up with them. Nowadays, I've heard of millions of them, and they're over and over again, right? So they're like on rewind all the time. But in the early days, I had not heard some of the lines that he had, and he seemed to have some of the greatest ones that, whether he made them up or he got them from somewhere, he had a wonderful source of material, I can tell you that.
Sure did. I have to ask you, it's beautiful. First of all, I've gotten all sorts of texts. I told you yesterday, from, quite frankly, people that I hope find me attractive saying, "Boy, you should have started wearing this mock turtleneck years ago." Am I right? Neil Diamond, did he not? He was known for wearing a mock, wasn't he?
I don't know. I started to wear the things when Tom Golisano took over the team coming out of bankruptcy after the Regis affair, and the Regises went away to jail. And Tom took over the team. Thank goodness he did, because it was they were in dire need of getting a financial hand that could handle the direction in which they had to go, and he did provide that. But he didn't like it when I took my tie and pulled it off to the side to relax a little bit as I was doing the games, and especially if I was going on camera. He didn't like it at all. I said, "Well, fine, I'll go along with that. I'll never wear a tie again." And I never did. I went out and bought turtlenecks and mock turtlenecks, and that's what I've always worn since. And that's a long time now. That's got to be 20 years.
Well, down here in Carolina land, the mocks are very famous because, a veteran like you, Don Waddell, is famous for wearing them. And I sent him a picture the night after RJ night. We were playing Minnesota, and I sent him the picture of the mock. And you know what he told me, RJ? He said, "I have been sitting in my office listening to RJ calls all day." That was pretty cool. So that was pretty neat. It makes me back in the question, as I was doing my prep today, and I was supposed to go to Rod Brindamore's son's baseball game, and I said, "I don't know if I'm gonna be able to get over there. I'm digging in with RJ," and he said, "Wow, that's cool." And so I went back and looked at Rod through the series. It went 7. You lost all those defensemen. Who were or was the Carolina players that impressed Rick Jeanneret the most during that series?
Your goaltender, he was certainly the one that was an incredible rock for the Carolina Hurricanes. I don't think there's any doubt about that whatsoever. I really, at the end of the game and after they'd lost and everything, I never go to the dressing room. I don't. I stay out of the room. I just don't go in. That's all. But that night I did, because that had been such an incredible ride. The Buffalo Sabres weren't supposed to get that far. There's no way they were supposed to get that far. And they did get that far, and without defense or anything else. And as a result of that, I went into the locker room and I just went around to everybody and shook their hands and thanks very much for the ride. And I got to Ryan Miller, the last person that I reached, and he looked at me and I looked at him, and we both started crying. It was kind of a silly situation, but I was so wrapped up in the moment and the fact that it was over finally. It sunk in right then that it's over. But boy, oh boy, that was a great ride and great competition with the Hurricanes. Awesome.
One of your co-captains, when I arrived in Buffalo on Monday, nobody could even do it 0.05% of justice, but I did a rendition of some of my favorite Rick Jeanneret calls, and one of them was, and he was one of the co-captains, and I sent it to him, and he loved it. Chris Drury.
Oh, yeah.
As Rick Jeanneret, he just loved it, and he and Danny Briere are the co-captains. That group that resulted in you going down to the room, led by guys like Briere and Drury, what made them uniquely special as a group of players?
It was just that they never quit. They never quit, and they knew that they were overmatched. They knew throughout the whole season that they shouldn't have been winning as many games as they were. But they just kept pounding away and putting it together, and the fans loved it. I mean, they just love to get up and go in those guys. I can tell you that earlier this season, Chris Drury, in his role as GM now with the Rangers, and what is he, vice president too, I guess, he came into the booth when the Rangers were playing in Buffalo before the game, and he came in and he looked at me and he said, "Are you really retiring?" And I said, "Yeah, Drew, I'm packing it in." And he said, "Can I change your mind?" I said, no, you can't change my mind. I've made that decision. It's going to happen. And then we went on to, talk about other things. And he was very generous too in some of his offers to me. And it was a nice night. And it was made me feel good again that people do care, and people who are the kind that you followed throughout their career didn't forget about you. So that was nice.
RJ, it's not just, in Buffalo, I don't want to, because you don't have a self-seeking bone in your body. You're Elvis, okay? You're about to get a key to the city, but you're beloved in the National Hockey League. You're first ballot Hall of Fame. So I'd love to be able to ask you from a broadcasting perspective, what you think the mix is to longevity is a big part of it, performance, nobody ever better as well. But to be able to be beloved, not just by the people in Buffalo first and foremost, but throughout the National Hockey League, and how you achieve that balance.
I think be yourself. I mentioned earlier that I didn't pattern myself after anybody. I didn't. But you consider when I started out, Foster Hewitt was still around, although he was not broadcasting at the time. His son Bill was. And Danny Gallivan, remember the first night in Montreal, I did a game there in the Forum, and I looked down the row, and whoa, there's Danny Gallivan. And the funny thing about him is, when he was working on Hockey Night in Canada, they had decided to go to headsets, and he'd used a stick mic all his career up until then. He would hold the mic, right? And I looked down there, and he's got the headset on, and he's got a pencil in his hand that he's holding up to his mouth, because that's the way he felt most comfortable. And it really looked, I didn't have a phone those days. I didn't have a camera, so I couldn't take a picture of it, but I wish the heck I had it.
I was speaking to, not with your 51 years of experience, but Kenny Daniels this afternoon with one of my mentors, long in Detroit, a fellow Hall of Famer in Mickey Redmond. And he said to me, ask RJ, he said, the iconic Mayday call was actually a radio call that then dubbed on television.
Yeah.
And what would you say about the future of radio and where you want it to go, where it is, and the adjustments that you've made through the years from radio to television, how those two mediums factor into your iconic call?
I think that I would have said radio will always be around for no other reason that in vehicles, in the cars and trucks and everything, and where guys and gals listen to you that way. But then now they got these self-driving cars coming out, so I don't know, you can't have a TV in there, right? You can watch everything as it goes on. I'm not too sure, but radio was always in my blood, and I was very well paid in radio. And it was Doug Moss who was president of the team at the time, and he asked me to take over the TV job, and I resisted. I really did. It took a long time before I finally decided that, okay, I'm going to try this, and we're going to make it work. And the thing that capped it off for me, and that made me make a final decision, was when he came to me and said, "We don't want you to change one iota. We want you to continue doing exactly what you're doing. Just get out of the radio booth, get over to the TV booth, make a radio call on TV. We don't care. Just do it. We want you there." And that, in addition to the money, he made that pretty attractive too. But that swung it for me right there. I decided that, okay, if they're all behind me on this, and it's going to make it a very easy transition, I'll go with it.
Again, longevity, brilliance, because my view is there's never been, well, you're my favorite play-by-play caller ever. In all broadcasters, it's once in about 19,000 blue moons that you'll ever have an opportunity, someone to have 51 years experience coupled with the unique supreme brilliance. But we all want to be valued. We all want to be valued by the fans, the people we work for, everybody. What advice would you give to broadcasters, not at your level, because that's on the top of Mount Everest, but to achieve that end?
Well, when I talk to youngsters, and I do get asked that a lot, they'll come to me and say, "You were the one who inspired me to go to broadcasting college," or whatever, and to take the tests. And I always tell them, when they're growing up and they've decided that this might be their path in life, to get an intern job anywhere, a radio station, a TV station. Just find an intern job that gets you on the inside of the business, because you can find out a lot about the business. You might find out that you don't like it, and that'll be a good part of your future going forward too, and you'll try and find something else. But get in there, get your nose in the door before you even get started to be paid, and find out if it's really for you or not, because you want to make the right choice to begin with. And if you get in there and you find out that whether you sit in front of a mic or whatever you do while you're in there, whatever you're assigned to, I think it would help immensely for any youngster that's heading in that direction or hoping to head in that direction, aspiring to do it.
A couple more off the beaten path questions before I bid you adieu. The first one is, and this is extremely meaningful because the show is called Digging In. Your beautiful noise of a voice sounds terrific. And recently you thanked your medical support staff during RJ night. You had to dig in with throat cancer. Is there any particular moment during that brave journey that you've overcome throat cancer that you were at the fork and Rick Jeanneret needed to grab a shovel and dig in?
Oh yeah, there were a couple of moments. It's almost tragic to say it, but I would come back from Buffalo, and that's where I was treated in Buffalo. So they drove me back and forth for my treatments. I had 33 straight radiation treatments and a whole lot of chemo sprinkled in between. And I would get home again, then lie down and sit down in the chair and put my feet up. I always felt lousy, right? I mean, I was so drugged up, it was incredible. But I used to think on more than one occasion, as I got deeper into the treatment, that I didn't really care whether I lived or died. I wanted it to be over one way or another. It was over, and I came through with flying colors, as the doctors told me at the start I was going to do, even though I was stage 3. as I've often said, I don't know a whole lot about cancer, but I did know there were only 4 stages. And it was tough. It was tough. I had incredible support from my family, from fans. Thousands and thousands of emails went to a particular email address that the Sabres set up for me. Those doctors were right. They just said, you are going to be better, and we are going to make sure it happens that way. And it turned out just that way. They were. And
you, maybe of all of the countless bullet points that you are LeMay, the best, my favorite, it's because you have done it for 5 decades plus for the people. You dug in and beat throat cancer for the people. RJ, when you think about being a people's broadcaster, I know you told me you were at an event this morning and you got to as many people as you could, but you were dwelling on the fact that there were about 100 people that maybe couldn't meet their hero, RJ. How have the people kept you going?
They're just there for me all the time. They're always there. Anytime I've been involved in any controversy of any size, they got my back. They've always had my back. I referenced the other night about some moms and their dads and their great grandmas and great grandpas and their grandpas and grandmas. And, I just go back for so long that, I've been around for a long time, man, a long time. I've enjoyed every minute of the ride.
You one of those people, and he's really the biggest reason that I have the friendship and I long have with you, is a fellow Hall of Famer, the president of our broadcast association. He has a little less hair than you do, Charles Caden. Charles, can you please share, he's a mutual dear friend, your favorite Charles Caden story?
The nicest thing that I knew about him, I am asked always, how many games have you done? How many games have you done? I have no idea. I didn't keep track of them. It's over. I'm north of 3,000. I know that, but I didn't keep track of how many games I did. Chuck Caden was a different story. I used to, in his sign off every night, this to be true. He used to say, this is Chuck Caden in game number, blah, 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 whatever it was. And I heard him and I thought, why didn't I think of that somewhere along the line? And then I could answer the question and answer it honestly.
Can I give you the background on that, RJ? I was playing golf with Charles. Oh my gosh, does he play quick? He putts from like 80 yards outside the green, okay? But we're playing, Charles and I and Jim Rutherford. And Jim Rutherford, we're on, I think, 10 or 11. And Jimmy turns to Charles and he goes, Chuck, you're the Vince Scully of hockey. I really think you should number your broadcast.
Really?
And Charles with his putter probably from 110 yards out, he said, really? And he said, so from that point on, Charles always signed off with the number of his broadcast. Jimmy Rutherford, who always appreciated broadcasters, that was his idea.
Well, I wish that I'd run into Jimmy earlier then, because then I would have been able to keep a better count than I ever did. Better count, an existing count. There's none around.
Because with your excellence, you've always kept it simultaneously lighthearted. RJ, it's the biggest reason that I'm grateful about just under half of your tenure as a broadcaster in the league, 51 years of supreme greatness. My most profound gratitude is I have met and become friends with people that otherwise I may not have encountered. And you are on the very, very short list of that gratitude that I'm able to call RJ a friend, aside from my admiration for you as the greatest voice I've ever heard. Thanks for doing this. Again, watching Friday night was astoundingly amazing. And I certainly hope now that the Sabres, it looks like, are turning a corner down the road when they're back challenging for a Stanley Cup, that somehow RJ will come out of Niagara Falls and be the voice to call the team to their first Stanley Cup championship.
That sure been suggested a lot, so we'll see what happens, Trip. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Love you, RJ. I will talk to you in Cease.
Oh, sure you will.
We're digging in with Trip today, yeah. Today, yeah. Today, yeah. Today,